Years after my husband vanished, his sister arrived in a luxury car and told me something shocking. The morning began quietly for the woman standing at the bus stop, with her sleeping child resting on her shoulder. She held a small worn-out bag in her other hand, the only bag she had left after moving from place to place. She didn't know where they would go next. She just knew they couldn't stay where they were. Her husband had been gone for years. One day he left for work and never came home. No message, no trace, no explanation. The world had swallowed him whole, leaving behind a silence that grew heavier with each passing day. People had helped at first. His family, neighbors, even strangers. But as time went on, concern faded and suspicion slowly grew. His relatives eventually turned cold, speaking less and judging more. They didn't say harsh words directly, but their distance said everything. And 3 weeks ago they told her to leave the small house she once shared with her husband. They said it wasn't her home anymore. She didn't argue. She didn't fight. She simply packed her things and left, holding her child close. Now she waited at the bus station, unsure of her next move. The early morning air was chilly. Cars passed by quickly, but none of them mattered to her. She stared at the road, lost in her thoughts, trying to gather the courage to start over once again. Just as she adjusted her bag strap, a low, smooth engine sound caught her attention. It wasn't the usual rattling of old buses or the loud engines of passing trucks. This one sounded expensive, clean and quiet. She turned her head. A luxury car was slowing down as it approached the bus station. It was spotless, polished, and clearly out of place in a neighborhood where people carried grocery bags instead of briefcases. At first, she assumed the driver was lost. No one she knew owned a car like that. But then the vehicle stopped. Right in front of her, her heart jumped when the window rolled down. She recognized the woman inside immediately. It was her husband's sister. They hadn't spoken properly since the first year of the disappearance. After that, conversations turned cold, then rare, then non-existent. She had learned not to expect anything, not kindness, not help, not comfort. But seeing the woman here, in such a car, with an expression so serious, it felt unreal. Her sister-in-law didn't greet her. She didn't smile. She didn't even hesitate. She simply said, "Get in." Her voice was steady, but there was a strange tension beneath it, something tight, urgent, almost fearful. The woman froze. She pulled her child closer and blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "Please?" the sister-in-law repeated. "Just get in the car. I need to tell you something." The bus station was suddenly quiet. The woman could feel eyes turning toward them, strangers curious about the expensive car, the tense faces, the unexpected scene. But she wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about the tone of her sister-in-law's voice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was shaken. Something was wrong. For years, this woman had avoided her. For years she had looked away whenever they crossed paths. For years she acted like the disappearance was somehow the wife's fault. So why now? Why this sudden urgency? Why show up in such a car? Why tell her to get in? Her sister-in-law opened the passenger door from the inside, signaling she wanted her to enter immediately. A small wind passed between them, making the moment feel even. The woman's child stirred slightly, pressing a tiny hand against her cheek. She looked down at the little one, then back at the open car door. Everything inside her whispered, "This isn't a random visit. This isn't a coincidence. This is something big." And whatever she was about to hear might change everything she believed about her husband's disappearance. She took a slow breath. The bus behind her drove away, and she stepped toward the car. Years after my husband vanished. His sister arrived in a luxury car and told me something shocking. The woman carefully helped her child into the back seat of the luxury car, fastening the seatbelt with gentle hands. The soft leather, the quiet hum of the engine, and the warm air from the vents made the inside feel completely different from the cold bus station she had just stepped away from. It felt like entering another world, one she didn't belong to anymore. She sat in the front passenger seat, resting her small bag on her lap. Her sister-in-law didn't pull away immediately. Instead, she kept both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Her chest rose and fell quickly, like someone preparing to say something difficult. The woman waited, unsure of what to expect. She didn't speak. She didn't want to interrupt whatever was weighing on the other woman's mind. Finally, the sister-in-law took a slow breath. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. The woman blinked, thinking she misheard. Those words had never been offered before. Not once. Not in the moments of blame, or silence, or distance. Hearing them now felt strange. Almost unreal. For what? She asked softly. "For everything," the sister-in-law whispered. "For how we treated you. After he disappeared, we were scared and confused, and we didn't know who to be angry at, so we put it on you." The woman looked down at her. Hands. You remembered the cold looks, the unanswered calls, the moments when she stood alone while they whispered among themselves. But she didn't say any of that aloud. It was too painful to revisit. The sister-in-law turned the car key, and the engine started fully. She drove out of the station slowly, merging onto the main road. The woman glanced back at her child, who had already fallen asleep. Unaware of the tension inside the car, they drove in silence for a minute, until the sister-in-law finally continued. "I should have come sooner," she said, "but I didn't know how." The woman listened carefully. Something in the tone told her this apology wasn't the real reason she had come. There was something heavier. And she was right. The sister-in-law's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice trembling. "Something I found out only 2 days ago." The woman's heart dropped. She didn't speak. She didn't interrupt. She just waited. Her sister-in-law swallowed hard. "It's about him," she said softly. "About my brother." The woman felt her breath catch. Her heart began to pound so loudly she could almost hear it. For years, she had lived with unanswered questions. For years, she had gone to bed wondering if he was alive or gone forever. For years, she had replayed their last conversation over and over, wishing she had said more, done more, held him longer. Now, suddenly, after all this time, someone was bringing him back into her life with a single sentence. "What about him?" she whispered. Her sister-in-law didn't answer right away. Her jaw tightened, and she blinked hard, as if holding back tears. "I don't know how to tell you this," she said. "And I'm scared of your reaction. But you deserve to know the truth." The woman's fingers curled tightly around the strap of her bag. Truth. The word itself felt dangerous. Her sister-in-law took a shaky breath. "He didn't disappear the way we thought," she said. "He didn't just walk out and get lost. He made a choice." The woman turned her head slowly, staring at her. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her sister-in-law opened her mouth to answer, but suddenly closed it again, as if the words were too heavy. The woman had waited years for answers. Now, sitting in that quiet car with the world moving past the windows, she felt like she was standing at the edge of something she wasn't ready for. Something she couldn't turn away from. The truth was finally coming, and it wasn't going to be simple. Years after my husband vanished, his sister arrived in a luxury car and told me something shocking. The woman sat completely still, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and throat. The car moved smoothly down the road, but inside her, everything felt uneven and shaky. Her sister-in-law's last words replayed in her mind. He made a choice. Those words felt sharp, like they didn't belong in the same sentence as her husband. He wasn't the type to walk away on purpose, at least. She didn't think he was gone yet. Here she was, listening to something she had never expected to hear. She looked out the window, watching the world blur into soft colors as they passed familiar streets. It was strange. Everything outside looked normal, but inside her heart, nothing felt normal at all. Her sister-in-law finally spoke again. "I found something," she said softly. "Something he left behind?" The woman slowly turned her head. "What did you find?" There was a quiet pause, the kind that makes the space between two people feel heavy. "Letters," the sister-in-law said. "Not one. Many. All addressed to you." The woman's breath trembled. "To me?" "Yes." The sister-in-law nodded, her eyes focused on the road. "I didn't know they existed. They were in a box at our mother's place. In the attic. I was looking for some old family papers when I saw his handwriting." The woman felt a soft ache in her chest. She remembered his handwriting well, soft, slightly slanted. Always a little rushed, like he wrote from the heart instead of the hand. The sister-in-law continued. "I opened the box thinking it was nothing important. But when I saw your name on the envelopes, I felt something inside me drop." The woman swallowed. "Why didn't anyone tell me about them?" Her sister-in-law lowered her voice. "Because we didn't know. None of us did. Our mother never said a word. And she passed away last year." She paused, her voice tight for a moment. Think she hid them because she didn't know how to handle what he wrote. Woman leaned back slowly, her mind spinning. Letters? Hidden. For years. Her hands tightened in her lap. "What did the letters say?" she asked quietly. Her sister-in-law exhaled deeply as if she had been waiting for that question and dreading it at the same time. "He wrote about feeling lost," she said. "About feeling like he was failing. He wrote that he didn't want to burden you or the family with his problems. He didn't explain everything clearly, but he wasn't in a good place emotionally." The woman's heart tightened. She blinked hard, trying to understand. "He wrote," the sister-in-law continued, "that he loved you deeply. But he didn't know how to be honest about what he was struggling with." The woman pressed her hand over her mouth, fighting the sudden wave of emotion. She had waited years to hear anything about why her husband had vanished. And now, the truth felt both comforting and painful. "But that's not all," her sister-in-law added quietly. "There's something else. Something important." The woman turned her head slowly. "What else?" The sister-in-law tightened her grip on the wheel. "One of the letters wasn't finished," she said. "It was dated the day before he disappeared." The woman's breath caught. "It said he wasn't leaving forever," her sister-in-law continued. "He said he just needed time. A little time to find himself." "And then?" Her voice broke for a moment. "He wrote that he planned to come back." The woman felt her heart drop in the deepest way. He was planning to come back? He never meant to disappear forever. She stared at her sister-in-law, her voice barely a whisper. Then, what happened to him? Her sister-in-law closed her eyes, for a brief second, gathering courage. "That," she said, in a trembling voice, "is what I'm about to tell you. And I need you to brace yourself." The woman reached instinctively for her sleeping child in the back seat, grounding herself with the little one's steady breathing. She wasn't ready, but she had to listen, because the next words were going to finally reveal the truth she had carried in her heart for years. Truth she wasn't sure she was prepared to hear. Years after my husband vanished, his sister arrived in a luxury car and told me something shocking. The woman held her breath as the car slowed down at a traffic light. The soft ticking of the turn signal filled the silence between them, steady and strangely loud. Her sister-in-law's face looked tired, as if she had spent days rehearsing the next part of the story, and still didn't know how to say it. Finally, she spoke. The day he disappeared. He wasn't on his way to work. The woman stared at her, stunned. What do you mean? He left early, like he always did. Her sister-in-law nodded. He did leave early, but not for work. There was a clinic on the other side of town he had been visiting for a few weeks. He didn't tell anyone, not even me. The woman felt a soft tremble run through her fingers. A clinic? For what? Her sister-in-law hesitated. He was meeting with someone to talk about stress, pressure, things he didn't feel strong enough to handle. He didn't want to worry you, so he kept it hidden. The woman felt her heart sink. He thought he had to hide that from me. He didn't want you to think less of him, her sister-in-law whispered. He cared about you more than anything. But he didn't know how to show you his pain without feeling like he failed you. The car moved forward again as the light turned green. The woman turned her face toward the window, blinking back the heaviness in her eyes. She wasn't angry, only sad that he carried so much alone, her sister-in-law continued, her tone soft but steady. The last time he went to the clinic, something happened. Something unexpected. A quiet pause filled the space. What happened? The woman asked. Her voice came out thin, almost fragile. He ran into someone outside the clinic, her sister-in-law said. Someone from his past. Someone he hadn't seen in years. The woman frowned. Who? Her sister-in-law shook her head. I don't know. The letter didn't give a name. It only said he saw someone who brought back old memories and old fears. He wrote that he needed time to think clearly. That's why he stepped away that day. The woman pressed her hand against her chest. So he didn't plan to disappear. He just needed space. Yes, her sister-in-law said quietly. But something else happened that same day. Something none of us knew. She reached down beside her seat and pulled out a small envelope. It was worn, as if it had been handled too many times. The edges softened from use. She placed it gently on the woman's lap. This was the last letter, she whispered. The unfinished one. The woman stared at the envelope, her hands frozen. You read it? Enough to understand what happened, her sister-in-law said. The rest is for you? The woman carefully opened the flap. Inside was a folded piece of paper. The handwriting unmistakably her husband's quick strokes, familiar loops. The kind of handwriting she once saw on notes left beside her morning coffee. She unfolded it slowly. The letter began with warmth, with love, with words that made her eyes sting. He apologized for pulling away. He explained that he felt overwhelmed by responsibilities and expectations. He wrote that he didn't want her to think he was weak. And then, her eyes paused halfway. Down the page. There, in the middle of a sentence, the handwriting stopped abruptly. A line trailed off, as if the pen slipped from his fingers. Her heart squeezed painfully. Her sister-in-law watched her quietly. He never finished it. And he never came home. The woman took a shaky breath. So he left. And something happened. Before he could return, her sister-in-law nodded very slowly. That's what I believe. And I think I know where he went that day after he wrote part of that letter. The woman's pulse quickened. Where? She whispered. Her sister-in-law tightened her hands around the wheel. You're about to see, she said. Almost there. The woman turned forward slowly, fear and hope mixing inside her chest like two storms colliding. Whatever waited ahead, it would finally bring her face to face with the truth. Years after my husband vanished, his sister arrived in a luxury car and told me something shocking. The road ahead narrowed as the luxury car turned off the main street and entered a quieter part of town. The houses here looked older, tucked between tall trees, the kind of neighborhood where time moved slowly. The woman had never been here before, but something about the quiet felt heavy, almost expectant. Her sister-in-law glanced at her briefly. We're close, she said softly. The woman held her sleeping child's small hand, grounding herself. Her heart was racing now, each beat echoing with questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. The car turned into a narrow driveway beside a small, peaceful building with a sign that read, Resting Garden Chapel. The woman felt a shiver run down her back. A chapel? She turned her head sharply toward her sister-in-law. Why are we here? Her sister-in-law parked the car but didn't get out right away. She held the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles pale. When she finally turned to face the woman, her eyes were full of something soft but painful. There's something inside you need to see, she whispered. The woman felt her stomach twist. She looked at her child again, then back at the building's quiet entrance. She didn't want to imagine what could be waiting behind those doors. Still, she needed answers. She needed closure. She needed the truth she had carried, like a heavy stone inside her for years. She stepped out of the car slowly, lifting her child into her arms. Her sister-in-law walked beside her, silent but steady, guiding her toward the entrance. Inside, the chapel was calm and warm. Soft lights glowed against pale walls, and gentle music played in the background. A kind-looking woman at the front desk nodded politely and gestured toward a small room on the right. He's waiting for you, the sister-in-law murmured. The woman's breath caught. Here, sister-in-law placed a trembling hand on her arm. Not alive, she said quietly. But he's here. And he's been here for a long time. The woman felt the world tilt slightly. She clutched her child closer, tears rising but not falling yet. She wasn't ready. A part of her still hoped for a miracle for her husband to be somewhere out there, waiting to return. But she stepped inside the room anyway. The space was small and peaceful. A table stood in the center, holding a wooden box with a simple silver plaque. No dramatic decorations. No displays. Just a quiet place for someone who had disappeared far too soon. Her feet felt heavy as she approached it. Her sister-in-law spoke softly behind her. He collapsed the same day he wrote that unfinished letter. The clinic tried everything, but they couldn't reach us in time. The staff only found his details later. They contacted our mother, and she paused, swallowing hard. She handled everything privately. She didn't tell any of us. I think she didn't want anyone to hurt more than they already did. The woman touched the smooth surface of the wooden box gently, as if touching it might help her feel the warmth of the man she once loved. She finally understood why the letters were hidden. Why no one gave her answers? Why his disappearance never made sense. He never left her. He never abandoned them. He simply never made it back home. Her eyes filled, tears finally slipping down her cheeks, not loud. Not dramatic, just quiet. Aching grief, and slow relief, at Finally knowing the truth, her sister-in-law stepped beside her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You deserved to know. And you deserved better." The woman nodded slowly. "I did, but I'm thankful to finally understand." She held her child close, whispering softly into the little one's hair. "Your father loved you. He really did." And for the first time in years, the weight she carried began to loosen not completely. Not suddenly, but enough to breathe again. As they left the chapel, the air outside felt gentle. The sky was soft with evening light, and the world, no longer felt as heavy as it once did. Her life had changed forever the day he vanished. But today, she finally found peace. And she walked away with something she hadn't felt in years.